Welcome to the Caribbean Edge. My name is Dawn Wilson, and I'm your host for this evening. Joining me, I have three beautiful and amazing women. I have Miss Alice Jackson with us. Welcome tonight, Miss Alice.
Pleasure.
And I also have Miss Sherry Garrett, who is our second time on TCE. Welcome again, Miss Sherry Garrett.
Hello, everyone.
Hi. And then we also have another first timer with Miss Shelia Bruno, who is the author of Life After Prison, Caught in the Aftermath. So welcome, Sheila.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. And if you've not watched Incarceration Part 1, I encourage you to do it because two of these beautiful ladies were married to men who were incarcerated, but they came on that particular episode. And so they're going to share with us what it's like supporting these men and being in love with these men, and any questions you want to ask them, they're willing to discuss with us tonight. So I'm going to let each one introduce themselves and just tell you a little bit about them. And if they miss anything, I'll catch you up too. So let's start with Miss Sherry. Tell us about you, Sherry.
My name is Sherry Garrett. I was born and raised in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I have two boys, Brandon and Dwayne, and a daughter-in-law and a grandson. So I'm excited about that. And also I moved from Phoenix to Maryland. And I have my husband is brilliant. Thank God that he's where he is today to be able to help someone else. So I'm excited.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about Sherry's background. So she was one of those, the most sought after actually female athlete here in Florida for high school, and she played multiple sports. So she's not bragging, but I'm bragging for her. A lot of athletes can relate to that. So she was a powerhouse and still is a powerhouse. But for high school, that's very important because one of the things we realize in life is so much can happen to us, and you know, we just have to deal with what's dealt with us, sometimes not for ourselves, but for our family and loved ones. So one of the reasons we're here tonight. Now, Sherry's husband that was here, and I'll give you a quick summary of his visit with us. He shared that he did armed robbery. He did 20 years. It was his first offense. He started out with Christian parents, college partying, drugs, alcohol, and just the wrong crowd. But when he went into jail, he had the mindset of he's on a missionary journey, and that helped him get through. So two kids at the time, 7 and 8. And when they returned, they were 27 and 28. He got very emotional talking about his beautiful wife, Sherry. And so just the rock and support she has been for him. And so, Sherry, anything else you want to add to that right now, or did I do a good job summarizing?
You did an awesome job. Everything is absolutely in place. Thank you.
Good, good. So, just for viewers that are tuning into this episode for the first time, very important for you to watch the first episode as well, but to give you some background on what was shared. And then I'm going to jump over to Miss Alice Jackson. Tell us about you, Miss Alice.
Hello, good evening. My name is Alice Jackson Dudley. I'm born and raised here in the city of Fort Lauderdale. I have 3 adult daughters, Shalonda, Maquita, and Chiquita. And I also have 5 grandchildren. And I'm a founder of A Day in the Park with Alice, where I cater to the homeless. And I'm also a co-founder of Calvin Dudley Senior Foundation. And it's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you all tonight to assist in wherever I can to let the world know that there is life after incarceration, putting God first in everything that you set out to do, and he'll bring it to pass even with the love that you have for that mate, God will prevail. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dudley. And you do some amazing work, especially during the holiday season. So we want to thank you for that. And hopefully you'll share a lot more with us. I do know your husband, Mr. Calvin Dudley, who actually came in the green room to say hi. He's quite jovial.
Yes.
Quite a character there.
Yes,
and
definitely.
So, he shared with us on the last episode, he did 15 years, first time offender as well. He was a teacher in Broward County. He was also a coach for football, well respected in the community, got involved with a lot of nightlife, partying, and drug of choice, cocaine.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And remind us, what did he do? What was his offense?
He was trafficking cocaine.
Okay, trafficking cocaine. Thank you. So we're going to hear all about your journey with him and where you both are today. Thank you so much for joining us, Miss Alice.
Pleasure.
Alice in the Park.
Yes.
So remember that, viewers. We got to check that out. And last but not least, we do have Miss Shelia Bruno, our first-time guest. I know very little about her except she wrote this fabulous book, Wife After Prison and Caught in the Aftermath. So Shelia, what do you want to share with us about why you actually even wrote that book?
Okay, so I am Shelia Bruno from Houston, Texas, married to Kevin Bruno. I have 2 children. I have 5 amazing grandchildren. I am an international speaker, a reentry coach. Also, as you say, author of Wife After Prison, Caught in the Aftermath. I'm the founder of Wife After Prison. And Wife After Prison was established in 2018 to raise awareness of post-incarceration syndrome. My husband, Kevin, served 28 years in prison. And unbeknownst to either of us, when Kevin came out, there was some psychological issues that came out as well. And it led me and Kevin on a rocky road in our marriage. I looked for support, couldn't find any support, so I created what I needed, and that's how I wrote the book. That's one of the reasons why I wrote the book, is to raise awareness, because there's thousands of Kevins out there, and there's thousands of Shelias, but nobody was talking about the after effects of prison. Nobody was talking about the psychological impact of incarceration. So I found it necessary to start this conversation.
Thank you. And you were married. Are you still married?
I'm currently still married with a pending divorce.
Okay. And how long have you been married?
Next month on the 26th, we would celebrate 7 years.
Okay. Okay. Well, welcome as well. And let's go back to you, Sherry. Tell us a little bit about the man you fell in love with, and how you felt when he got arrested. Were you aware of what he was doing out in the streets?
Okay. The man that I fell in love with, I met at college, Claflin College. First, I didn't want him to be around me, but he kept on being consistent. And that's one thing I like, for someone to be very consistent and very educated. And so he was very educated man, did everything on campus that, made sure I was okay, was meeting me at the at every class. When the class ended, he was there, so we can go eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And also, by me being athlete, he will be there at the gym waiting until my practices was over. So I can't hear. Hello?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. And so from there, we ended up getting married after I graduated from college. And that's where I had the 2 kids. We worked at American Express together. Everything was great until about maybe starting to get into the 5th year, up to the 7th years, things started to wind down working. I thought he was just working hard, but he was a functional substance abuse. He did cocaine, marijuana, drinking, smoking, and then that ran into getting involved with other men that wasn't married. So I guess he felt like he couldn't take care of the family. He had to make quick money, and those things didn't work out. So that's how he ended up with the robbery, with being around other people. From there, he's always been my, soulmate, best friend. But when things went haywire and he ended up in jail, it made me feel a certain way, like I had done something. What did I do wrong? It made me sad when I had to see my husband, handcuffed behind bars, and I had to talk to him, from the distance. It wasn't good at all. And I didn't want the boys to see him like that, but I never held them back from writing him and going to see him. From there, it was a rocky road for me, because we really got into it, a lot of arguments back and forth. Didn't understand why. I kept asking myself why, what did I do wrong? And then from there, it ended up where he was in for 20 years. And then that's where, when I played basketball, that determination wouldn't stop me from raising my boys to me. So it wasn't a good sight. But so I'm always a hard worker, and I learned that from playing sports, being determined, I'm not gonna lose. So it ended up, I had 2 jobs, and I ended up having 3 jobs to make sure that my boys was not gonna lack in anything. So that's where I feel that I support my husband because of that, because he was behind bars.
Wow. Yeah, thank you. So when he first gets arrested, and then you have to go through the whole trial process with him, correct?
Yes. His mother and father handle a lot of that. They kind of like kept me, away from all of that, where I wouldn't have, so it wouldn't be a burden on me and the boys.
Okay.
So his parents ended up getting a lawyer, going to try to fight it, but he got arrested in Georgia, and Georgia, you're gonna serve your time, the full term. And so when that happened, when he got to the end of that process, even though the boys was, had them went through college on a scholarship, and honor students, at that point, I needed closure. So I had a homecoming that I had to speak to the young ladies on the basketball team to encourage them with, what I had been through. And always to keep your teammate near, because you never know when you need someone to lean on. And so from that point, after the homecoming, he asked me to come to the transition home where he was. And when I went into the transition home, the center where he was, I saw him from a distance on the behind the bars, but he was outside, but he didn't see me. Well, he noticed there was a car there, and I can see the smile, just like a little kid at the gate waiting on the guests to come in. And so when I went in the first time, the lady asked for, do you have your ID? Because you can't carry a whole lot of things into the transition center, which I wasn't aware of. So I had my purse and stuff, so I had to go back. And so he was waiting, trying to see if he's gonna hear his name called, because he talked me to all the way till I got there. But then I finally got in. Once I got in to see him in the transition home, he was nervous, like shaking off a leaf. And I said, "Ron, you know me." And then he said, "Let's pray." And that's how I knew I had my husband back. And then from there, we just had like we was on our first date, like all over again.
Wow. I can't even imagine, like, so many years later, I'm thinking, do I even know this person anymore? You know, I've had people from my past that want to date, and they weren't incarcerated, but it's like, I just didn't have those feelings anymore. So to speak to you where, you know, it's just your husband and you had such a connection. Tell us when you first heard about he was being sentenced. So reality is now your husband is going away for an extended period of time. What did you go through emotionally as a wife and a mom? Can you describe some of that for us?
I was disappointed. I couldn't imagine someone that I care so much for behind bars. And then I had to grow up real fast because I had to be the mother and the father. And it took mentors, coaches, pastors, helping. But through it all, it was a learning process. While I was learning, the boys was learning. It was a learning process for me to know what I'm supposed to do to help someone that's in the need and that need a second chance in life. To not hold them accountable, well, hold them accountable of what they done, but don't beat them down.
Yeah. So this might be a tough question. Did you think about leaving? Was that ever an option?
Oh, yes. Plenty times. Like, I was like, I could do better than this. But in the back of my mind, I knew my vows, good or bad. I had to go through it with him. Even though he was behind bars, I was behind bars as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that, Sherry. You're definitely a strong woman and a supportive woman and a woman who truly loves, because it takes that and with God to guide you through them 20 years. Like you said, you were also somewhat a prisoner as well because your life somewhat is on hold and then you have to get through that. And obviously your kids also help you focus. As moms, that always helps us, right? To say, what are we going to do to get our kids through this? And to show their dad in the best light as well. Yeah, thank you. Miss Alice I think Dudley's in the background cracking her up somewhere there. But we're going to skip over to Miss Shelia. Shelia, tell us about your journey with it and why the book and where you are.
Okay, my journey started in 2014. My husband and I dated in the 9th grade, 1976. And I was just in love with him at 16, that 16-year-old kind of love. And in 2014, I was working overseas in Bagram, Afghanistan, and he sent me a friend request. And I hadn't seen or heard from him since we left school in the 9th grade. And of course, I hurried up and accepted his friend request. And we began to talk, we began to connect. And within the first hour of us talking, he told me that he had been to prison. He had actually been to prison twice. The first time he went, he was 20 years old on a 10-year sentence. And of that sentence, he did 8.5 years, aggravated robbery. And within 9 months of his release, he was released, I think in 1992. Within 9 months of his release, he was gone back. Same charge, aggravated robbery. This time he had a 65-year sentence. And he, of the 65, he did 20, released in 2010. So within the first hour, you know, he told me all about this. He told me about his childhood trauma, because when he came to school, everybody loved Kevin. All I could see was this amazing guy. He was happy, he was funny, but he began to tell me about his childhood experiences, and it was anything but ideal. So anyway, within 7 days, he asked me to marry him. You know, we hadn't seen each other in 38 years. Within 7 days, he asked me to marry him. He actually said, Sheila, I want to ask you to marry me, but I'm going to go talk to your mom first. And so he did. And my mom gave him, you know, blessing, said, yeah, you know. But anyway, 38 years, within 7 days, We were engaged. 53 days later, we were married. First 2.5 years, I was happy. I was very, very happy because not only was I happily married to the man that I dated in the 9th grade, I was happily married to the first man that found me attractive. Because when I was 16, I had low to no self-esteem. You know, I was very, very tiny, like that olive oil thin, but it was something that Kevin saw in me. And so the first 2.5 years was amazing. You know, we did a lot of things together. We started a business together. I would actually sit in this window and wait on him to come home. I would be in the window like a little child, just waiting on him to come home. We couldn't wait to see that truck hit that corner. And so then going into that 3rd year, the narrative of my story began to change. He became unrecognizable, both in character and personality. He became somebody I didn't know. He was mean. His emotions was raw. His behavior was chaotic. And I, said, I no longer feel like a soulmate. He proclaimed me as his soulmate, but he began to treat me like a cellmate. And I have to say this, my husband is an amazing man. He is an amazing man. And to this day, I love him and I will always love him. But we have to understand that prison has side effects. Prison has side effects. And so what he was going through, it vicariously attached itself to me. I fell into such a deep, dark depression. Sleeping pills had become my meal of choice. I was confined in my bedroom in a self-induced solitary confinement state. Right? I needed support. I needed support for this after prison experience. And so I took to the internet and I'm trying to find me some after prison support on the internet, and I couldn't find anything. And so one day I went to Facebook and I typed in prison wives. And when I did, up popped a slew of groups. And so I joined 26 of those groups. And one day I sit and I calculated, and it was over 26,000 people in the group. And when I found out what Kevin was dealing with, called post-incarceration syndrome, I wanted to know, did anybody else hear about this? Do y'all know about this? And so I went into each of those groups and I asked the question, have you heard of post-incarceration syndrome? And for those who don't know what it is, it's a set of mental disorders that occur in those who are currently incarcerated, those released, most significant in those who have spent a lot of time in solitary confinement. And so I posed that question in the group. And everything I got back was no. And so Kevin and I agreed we needed to be transparent. We needed to share this. And so we began to share. We began to do Facebook Lives, pulling back the sheets on our relationship. And when I did, that's when the cries started coming. Oh my God, he's coming home and I'm scared. Oh my God, had I known this 10 years ago, maybe me and my husband would still be together. And the most heartbreaking one I heard was, oh my God, had I known this, maybe my husband would still be alive, because 3 days after he got out of prison, he committed suicide. And so the question was floating around in the group, what happened in 3 days? I said, that's not the question. What happened in prison that he couldn't live with? And so that led me on my journey to raise awareness, because nobody's talking about this. Nobody's talking about the side effects of prison. Nobody's talking about the unrealistic expectations of those who are coming home. And so this is what led me to start the private group. And when I started the private group, then I found out that there's thousands of Kevins out there, thousands of Sheilas out there. I made a commitment to donate a copy of my book to every prison in USA. So far, I've completed 8 states. And to get letters from the guys on the inside that says, thank you for writing your book. I now understand what's wrong with me. They said, I know the behavior, I just didn't know the label of it. So this is why I do what I do. I give voice to the ones behind the bars. I give voice for the ones, the family members who are not open to talk about it right now. So I'm known for giving voice to the psychological impact of incarceration.
Thank you, Sheila. I'm sorry about your husband. Tell us what you, based on what you've discovered now, do you think you could have done anything differently, or what advice would you give to women or men?
You know, what I would have done differently, I would have done my due diligence. Okay, he's been in prison 28 years. Let me see what that looks like. Let me do some research to see what that looks like. Right? I didn't. 28, all I know is he, in the 9th grade, he was fine, he was cute, he was this. Yes, yes, I will marry you. Right? I didn't consider the trauma.
Yeah.
Right? Because trauma undealt with, it's gonna come back up again. It was never addressed. And so with a lot of our guys and even ladies who are incarcerated, it's a high percentage that has had pre-incarceration trauma that was never dealt with. Then you go to prison and that's traumatic in itself, right? And then you come out, you 15, you went in at 15, you come out at 40, you ain't never been in a relationship. You don't know what it's like to be the head of the household, the man of the household. That's traumatic. So you have all of these traumas that were never dealt with. Yeah. And it's gonna come out. One of the things with Kevin is, before everything really surfaced, he used to say, I need to go talk to somebody. And I was like, okay, I didn't know he was going through anything, because a lot of them suffer in silence because they don't want nobody to know, right? And he used to say that, and I would just think, oh, okay, you know, all right. And so, but when things began to really get bad and he would say, I need to go to talk to somebody, I was like, okay, when you're going? Because right now I need to go talk to somebody, right? And which I did. I ended up going to see a therapist to cope with this. So it's important that we as family members, we got to understand. And I ain't mad at my husband. If I was mad at Kevin, that would be just like saying I'm mad at somebody because they have cancer. I understand. I understand, y'all. But it took some time, and it took a lot of reading it, and it took me being uncomfortable. It took me doing things that I wasn't used to doing. It took this introvert person and gave me extrovert experiences so that I can understand what's happening with my husband. And so as family members, we ain't consider no trauma. We ain't consider none of that. We ain't consider what prison is like and how prison affected them. We ain't looked at none of that.
Yeah. And I can imagine all the changes just outside your home itself. There's a changes with both of you as husband and wife, right? And especially if you're a strong working woman and the man comes out after the first 72 hours, what's going on when he realizes he's not the man of the household, paying the bills and providing, right? That's a change within your household. And as the weeks and the months and the years go by, and he's asking for help too. Did you go to therapy together or you went separately?
We went separately because I understood, and he understood he needed to deal with some stuff that didn't have nothing to do with Sheila.
Yeah.
He needed to deal with some stuff, and I went to learn how to deal with what was happening with Kevin, but found out that there was some things that Sheila needed to look at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And as for the responsibility part of it, there's a condition called arrested emotional development, right? It's when the psychological development is incomplete. So the majority of men and women who have went to prison, they come out and they suffer with arrested development, meaning that that there's a maturity level that's not there yet. You got a whole man, you got a whole woman, right? But their maturity level isn't there. And for my husband, for 2.5 years, you know, I took care of the majority of the things. I didn't pressure him, but he contributed. I didn't pressure him. I took care of what needed to be taken care of. In that 3rd year, I said, I need you to be more responsible. I said, I need you to be the head of the household. And he turned and he looked at me and he said, Sheila, what does that look like?
Yeah.
He said, prison strips you of responsibilities. And I understand each state is different, but I know Texas is one of the worst prisons. He said, prison strips you of your responsibilities. You're told what to do, when to do it. You know, and he said, you know what you want in a husband. I don't know if I know how to be that man. Because there's still, again, there's that arrested development condition right there. So it's a lot of education. It's a lot of learning. And so many times women ask me, what can I do to support my loved one? What can I do? My thing is this: support yourself first. Educate yourself first. Make sure your cup is overflowing. What's in the cup is for you, and what comes out is for them. Because this is not an easy journey, and you're going to have to be equipped to handle it.
Yeah. Wow, that's so powerful. I don't know how you women do it, you know, your strength, but I certainly appreciate you coming on and sharing your journey, because as you're speaking about it, I'm like, who is there for the women that are going through this? You have to be extremely strong, and hopefully there's some support groups out there as well that you can have these conversations with, because like you said, Sheila, and that's very important, they're on a schedule within that prison system for every hour or whatever. They have to be accountable for this, that, but it's so limited compared to the rest of the world. And then I'm thinking about when you do get out, everything has changed. Like technology has totally changed for us. We can't even keep up on the outside. Moreover, someone that their life has been taken for 15, 20 years, they come out, there's Uber. They're like, what's Uber? You come out and there's all these apps on your phone. You don't even know how to bank anymore. You know, you just think of the daily things that we take for granted, and their lives are completely different. So that is a transition. That reality is no longer for them. Wow. Okay, so Miss Alice.
Ma'am.
Let's switch to you. Tell us about your journey and how you transitioned, some of the findings that you had on your journey, having your husband transition back home.
Well, firstly, I met Calvin in 1970 when I was 13 years old. And I fell in love at an early age. And we drifted apart. Calvin went on to live his life. I went on to live mine. And in the midst of that time, we both live here in the city of Fort Lauderdale. And from 1970, I had not seen Calvin at all. Our paths never crossed, you know, for whatever reason. I always say that it was God blocking him from me at that point. And in 1991, Calvin and I went to his brother's funeral, and that's when I saw Calvin after 21 years. And when I saw him, didn't realize that those feelings, you know, were still inside me. And I couldn't stay in his presence. So I said to my sister, we gotta go. I can't stay here. And she was like, what do you mean? I said, I just can't do it. And she said, well, we will leave, but you got to explain to me why we have to leave so suddenly. I say, I will, we just need to go. And we left, and we went to a place so that we can have dinner. And I explained to her, I said, well, when I saw Calvin, all those feelings resurfaced, I didn't realize that I still have those deep feelings for Calvin. And she was like, what do you mean? I said, Calvin and I have always been uh, in a relationship. When I was 13, we used to play this little game, we called it 30 on top stop. We would always meet up under a tree. And Calvin was the first man that ever kissed me. And so we would play this little game and I would run home and change my little underwear and run back, So, and after that, he like disappeared. And it left a big mark, me being 13, feeling myself, at that particular time. And not knowing that Calvin had went off to college, and he came back to be a teacher, and he was doing different things, being on top of his game. And I guess in the midst of, we talked about it briefly, how Cowboys submerged and just took over Mr. Dudley. And I wasn't too thrilled about when I heard that Calvin had been arrested, and I asked why, and no one could tell me why. And I said, my first opinion was, well, he probably was messing with some little girl. That was my opinion. So later on, about a month later, it was brought to me that he had been incarcerated because of drug trafficking. And I'm like, wow, I never knew this, because our paths never crossed. So 23 years went by. 2013, I was in the presence of Calvin. One of his brothers passed, was deceased, and I went to the funeral. And I want to make my presence known at that particular moment. And when I saw him walk down this aisle in the chapel, all I could see was the back of him. And I just looked up and I said, oh my God, I said, I got to let him know that I'm here, And so he went up and he started talking, and he took the service and he gave it over to his niece. And he walked down the side of the chapel, and I said, this is my time to make my presence known. So I walked out to the back, and I was standing there waiting for him to recognize that I was standing there, because he was talking to the funeral home director. And the funeral home director was looking like, man, look over there, got somebody waiting on you, So when he looked and he saw me, he was like, oh my God. So he grabbed me and he hugged me. And he said, we got to go outside. So we walked outside and we were talking. And so he kissed me the same way he kissed me when I was 13. He kissed me in 2013. And I was like, whoa, this can't be. And he said to me, he said, girl, after all these years, you can still, rise a brother, and I'm like, you need to stop. So he asked me, he said, are you going to come to the repast? I said, no, Calvin, I got to go and take care of my catering business, because I do catering on the side as well. And to make a long story short, I gave him my number for him to call me, because he was going to Pittsburgh that next day. And I said, well, when you come from Pittsburgh, we can have dinner or whatever, we can sit down and talk about, where we left off when we were 13 and 15. And he said, okay, I can do that. And it didn't make it to after he got back from Pittsburgh. He called me that same night. And I said, I thought you were supposed to call me when you got back from Pittsburgh. He said, you just don't realize what you have done to me. And he said, is there any way you can come and meet me? And I said, no, I want to go home because I want to take my shower and, get ready for church the next morning. He said, no, I need to talk to you. And I said, okay, Calvin, I'll come to where you are. And that's what I did. I went to repast, and we sat in the car and we began to talk. And I looked at him and I said, Calvin needs me right now. I could feel he was going through something, but I just couldn't put my fingers on it. And I said, okay, I'll wait here until you're done and I'll take you home. So I took him home and we sat in the car and we talked and everything. And he said, well, I need you to come inside, and talk to me. I said, no, Calvin, I need to go home. I'm not coming inside. In my mind, you want to get me inside and do other stuff. No, I'm going home. So he said, no, 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 come on inside. I need to talk to you. So he finally made me decide to come inside. So we sat inside and we sat down and we talked. And he was asking me, how did I find out about, the things that was going on? And I explained to him, well, I worked at the same place that your ex-wife worked, and she was giving me the information that I needed. I said, but in all respect, Calvin, I said, I was searching for you on Facebook. And when I saw you on Facebook, you didn't look good to me. And the Spirit spoke to me and said, he needs you. And I'm like, And I had to think about it because, when the Spirit speaks, you have to be obedient. I wanted to do it my way, but God wanted it done his way. So Calvin and I started dating. It wasn't easy because like Shelia said, that traumatic stress or whatever, Calvin was dealing with that, not knowing what he was dealing with. Calvin got to a point where he went to a black hole. And it was very, very difficult trying to pull him out. But by the grace of God, my God being with me, giving me the strength, because Calvin was my assignment to help him get back to where God needed him to be. And I just give God all the glory and the praise for that, because if it had not been for God to help me, we wouldn't be where we are today. And I just thank God for it. Calvin has done tremendous things, after his incarceration. We started a foundation, Calvin Dudley Senior Foundation, which we launched in 2014. And we did our first event out of one vehicle. Everything we had to do, we did it with one vehicle, the food, the chairs, everything. And it brought in about 75 people. And I said, well, Calvin, I think that we can do bigger. We can do better than that. And he said, you sure? I said, yes, I'm positive. So he said, you got my back? I said, yeah, I got your back. I'm here. Whatever you want to do, we can do it. I said, whatever you put your mind to, Calvin, you can do it. I said, but you got to believe in yourself. Nobody else but you and the man upstairs. You do that, I will back you 100%. And here I am today. We're married now. We've been married for 2 years. And I thank God for it. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all. Through prayer, God brought us through. God has blessed us tremendously. We give back to the community, and it's just a blessing. Calvin is a strong individual. He's a great man, and God is doing wonderful things in Calvin's life. And I thank God for it. Sweat off my brow. Sweat off my brow, because Calvin is a piece of work. It's not easy. It's not easy dealing with Calvin. Calvin is up 4 o'clock every morning, and it forces me to get up, and we brainstorm. So I love Calvin. I've always loved him, and I always will. And I just thank God for bringing him back into my life, because he has made me very, very happy. And when we got married, that was the happiest day of my life. And we're still doing great things. We're embarking on a new venture, whereas he's getting ready to do CDL, Calvin Dudley, foot washing. So it's a part of Senior Appreciation Day, where we used to do the feet washing for the ladies. So he's embarking on that. And I'm just so grateful to have him in my corner. You know, he backs me with whatever I set out to do. Just like I cook every second and fourth Saturday of the month, and he delivers for me. So he's a good guy, but you got to be very, very strong to deal with Calvin.
So what was the big, because he's quite charming. I've spoken to him a few times now, and the ladies met him in the green room. So he's quite the handful. I can see the charm and why you're glowing with love for your husband. What was the biggest challenge for you, though, with him doing the re-entry?
My biggest challenge was when he got to the point where he did not believe in himself. And that was hard for me because I kept telling Calvin, you can do whatever you put your mind to. You got to put your mind to it. But he sunk into this deep, dark hole. And he didn't want to talk to anybody, you know, he didn't want to go around anybody, you know. And it put me in a position to whereas, you know, I'm like, Lord, I don't know if I could do this. You know, Lord, I don't know whether I should stay or whether I should go, you know, because it got to a point where he just shut everyone and everything out, including me. And I got on my knees and I said, Lord, you told me that Calvin needed me now. You got to help me with this because I can't do this alone. And God gave me the strength in order to pull him up out of that dark pit. And that was a turning point. And he has not looked back. He's been going full force ever since. And I thank God for that.
And up at 4 a.m. to force you up to. So that's a good thing. We appreciate all the work in the community. I think what you ladies are doing, you know, without you probably even knowing, is just shedding the human factor to these men, you know, because, you know, in society, we're so judgmental. And so I enjoy having these conversations because you bring that human side of these men to us all. And I can't thank you enough for that. So back to you, Sherry. What would you want people to know? Because in the green room, the ladies enlightened me as well that it's actually called Returning Citizens. And it's actually April is the Returning Citizens Awareness Month. So we're having these conversations in the right month. But also it's everyday important because as human beings, none of us don't make mistakes. And to hear you women talk about the strength you have and also the mental capacity that you need to be strong, not just for your husbands, but yourselves as well. And that's so important because just me on a regular day, I need mental health and mental strength just getting through a day. I can't imagine your lives, you know. So talk to us about the mental capacity. I'm going to start with Shelia.
The mental capacity. This is what I know. Like I said before, you have to make sure that your cup is full before you can pour into somebody else's cup. Before I met Kevin, I was whole. Spiritually, financially, emotionally, I was whole, right? This experience took me to a dark place mentally. Like I said, I ended up having to go to therapy for that. So it can take an emotional toll on you. And so last year, when I began to notice some of the same behaviors, not as aggressive, I was like, not this time. I'm not doing this again. You know? And there are some times that you have to walk away to save yourself. I don't care nothing about love. What love got to do with me saving myself? What does love have to do with me making sure I'm mentally stable? And this is what I tell the ladies in the group. While he's away, make sure that you're building your muscles. because this is sometimes a battle you just can't win. Yeah, it takes a lot of emotional toll on you, the behaviors. I had a guy to reach out to me last week. He said, I follow you. He said, I've been gone 22 years. He said, and I know I'm messed up. He said, I'm messed up mentally. And he said, I have messed my wife's head up. So this is why I encourage the ladies, while he's away, make sure you're building you some muscles and make sure you're setting you some boundaries, because some of them come out with reckless behavior. Some of them bring the penitentiary into the household. You have an otherwise peaceful environment, but they bring that chaos into the household. And if you're not mentally strong, you're going to be one of those that said, I'm losing myself, as I said the very first time, but the second time, I refuse to lose myself again. So we have to make sure that we're doing a lot of self-care for ourselves. Do I love my husband? Absolutely, I do. I think he's an amazing man, but there are some issues. And for that reason, we're going to be friends. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. So Sherry, from a mental capacity, can you speak to that, especially when it comes to your children as well? You had 2 young boys at the time. Your husband was incarcerated. And then what did that do for you mentally? Because now, as Sheila mentioned, and also Miss Alice, taking care of yourself, that self-love, self-care, and not just for you, but the children as well.
Yes. For me, when we found out he was in jail and was going to be gone for a long time, with me, it was, I was down for 3 days. Like, I didn't eat, cried. But I knew I had to get up. I had 2 boys that I had to support. And on the 3rd day, that's when I had to push no matter what. I mean, again, that was it for me, because I kept myself busy a lot. I kept, my boys kept me busy by, playing different sports, playing different instruments. So I didn't have time to lay down and be in this depression mode. I was just there for 3 days. And after those 3 days, I lifted myself up, say, I got to do this. And I believe that sports, and first and foremost, God, it was the midst. I did a lot of praying, did a lot of fasting. And then my husband on the other side, he was doing a lot of praying and a lot of fasting. And then he was encouraging others while he was behind the bars. And even behind the bars, he was able to do a TED Talk. I was able to go, they paid my way to come and see him speak. And then when he came home, the family members was very supportive of him. He was like a product son that came home. His friends from who was out before him came, all his family members came. We surrounded him with love. We have to have a lot of patience, not only with him, but within yourself. And once you love yourself, love and peace break all barriers, no matter what. And that's how I got through it. It's with the peace and love. And we have to give everybody deserves a second chance.
Yeah.
Everybody, including ourselves. We mess up a lot, but we're not perfect.
Yeah. A lot of us get away with stuff that we probably could go to jail for, and we don't. We just get lucky or something. So Michelle Hussein, thank you all the viewers that are tuned in. Michelle Hussein is asking, how old were you, Miss Sherry, when he was sentenced, and what made you stay?
I was 30 years old. And what made me stay, My boys. My mom was a single parent, and I didn't never want to be a single parent. And that what made me stay, because my boys, the love and the love that I had for him as well, kept me together. Said no matter what, no matter for good or bad, you got to be there. For sick or death, you got to be there.
Yeah. And I met your husband too on the last show. He seems such a well put together gentleman that I can see. Everyone's personality is so different, and every woman's experience is going to be different, and every man's as well. Because not only are you bringing your own personality, there's stuff we deal with in our childhood as well. That adds to that. That adds to the choices we're making as we grow up, and then they're stripped of so many years in their lives. It's so traumatic. So thank you all for being vulnerable. Michelle also asked of Sheila, what type of job career did you have prior to your organization, Wife After Prison?
Prior to Wife After Prison, I worked overseas for 10 years as a civilian contractor. I worked in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Kuwait.
Okay, so let's talk about, as we wrap up, what you want young kids to know, because I want you to speak to them all from a woman and wife's perspective. I know people will say, just don't get involved, just try to walk the straight path. So what other advice would you give to them? And then also to the spouses that are supporting someone transitioning or re-entering back into society. I know Sheila touched on a lot of it, which is, just be there. Therapy might be important for some people, educating yourself, because Sheila was able to find a lot of resources and support groups online. If there's anything you ladies can add to any of that, that would be so helpful for everyone. Let's start with you, Sheila.
Okay, I would say to just a family member in general, not just necessarily a spouse. The education piece is important. And the way that I found out about the psychological impact of incarceration, I'm laying in bed and I'm praying, God, just what's going on with my husband? And God spoke and said, Google, can a boy become a man in prison? And when I did, this is when these articles popped up, these websites, and what I saw was what I was living. And my husband confirmed, this is what I'm going through. So in order to provide that support, we gotta have information, because a lot of times we think that our loved ones are going to, things are gonna just take off. Begin like they ended. And that's not the case, because so many years have passed. So everybody has changed, right? So it's very, very important to educate ourselves and not take all the information in for ourselves, but make sure we're sharing it with our loved ones. And to any child out there, I would just say, be obedient. Just be obedient to your parents. You may not like everything that they say, because we didn't. However, just know that your parents have your best interests at heart. And my thing is this, and I'm going to say this because this is something that happened to my husband. If anybody does anything to you that's inappropriate, don't be afraid to tell. Even if they tell you, if you tell it, this is going to happen, take your chance. But make sure you tell an adult when someone does something to you that's inappropriate. Because so many people in prison, I guarantee you, if they would tell the truth, they were molested as a child. So that's what I would say to my kids. Just be obedient. And if anybody does anything, anybody say anything to you that's inappropriate, make sure you tell your parents.
Wow. Thank you, Sheila. And you touched on something so important, is what happens to us as children. And I say us as children because It happens to so many around the world, and we keep it a secret. We don't oust them. And so, you know, as adults, we think that we can get away with stuff, and it's not true. You know, you tell your parents, and kids are scared. And so from a parent's perspective, it's having these conversations with our kids as well, to say, if this should happen, I am the person you come to. I don't care what that person says to you, you need to let me know. And parents, you know, we say this all the time, stop leaving your kids with just any and anybody. Be responsible. Partying and stuff, you give that up when you have a kid, and know who to trust, even your family members, because your kids are getting hurt. So thank you for mentioning that. And you're so right. It's the unspoken stories of our children. So on Caribbean Edge, we certainly cover those topics and plan to keep covering them as well, and spreading awareness. So thank you. Miss Alice, any advice you would give on re-entry or to family members? Because you go through a shame. Caribbean people are very shameful. You know, somebody gets sick with certain diseases, or somebody is molested. Family members will say, we don't even want to know, don't tell anybody, you know. And maybe in America and different countries, we have probably a different mindset. And it happens here too, where it's a shame on the family. Someone gets arrested, you don't want to tell. So people are going through that. What advice do you have for us, Miss Alice?
Well, knowledge is power. And we as parents, we need to get into the conversations with our children to give them that comfort that, you know, if something is going on with them, we want to know, you know, let us know what you're dealing with. Don't be afraid to say what's on your mind, what's on your heart. And as being an adult, we got to keep our children close, more so now than ever, because there's so many young girls and young boys at this age, 12, 13, they're being taken off the streets like never before. We got to go back to raising our children as a village. Like when we came up, we had a village raising us. We were so close, you know, you couldn't do anything without someone knowing what you were doing, where you were going. Keep an eye on your children at all times, because they are precious. Our children are our future. And we as adults, no matter if it's your child or someone else's child, if you see something going on with that child, try and talk with that child to guide them in the right direction. Don't scold them, because when you do that, you're going to lose them. So I feel that all parents, whether small, big family, large family, or whatever, as a community, deal with the children. Keep the children safe, because they are our future. And we need our children to grow up in a society where they don't have to be afraid to go to the store or to the movies, or, you know, to be with friends. The children are so afraid to go out now because they're afraid of being taken. And you see it every day, where a child is missing, you know, an Amber Alert, you know, every 2 minutes or 2 hours or whatever. So keep a close eye on your children. Pray for the children, that God will keep those children safe, because they are our future. Thank you.
Thank you. And we talked about molestation of children. Another point to be raised is the abuse of children, whether it's physical or mental abuse, also falls in the same category. If your kids are scared of you, then they certainly don't feel comfortable coming to you. And I can share with you that I grew up being so scared of my dad that if anything had happened to me, I would not have gone to him. So make sure that your kids know that you love them and that they're comfortable coming to speak to you. They may not tell you everything, trust me. Right, I have kids. So a fact, but your kids should not be scared of you as a parent. It's building those relationships, and that will help our children. Miss Sherry, Thank you so much again for joining us. Anything you want to say about reentry or advice you have for families and friends?
Real quick, everyone has said everything. And when my kids was coming up, they didn't go over everybody's house. They stayed with me. I was the mother cub. So you mess with my cubs, we got issues. But I would say to the parents who have kids, listen. Listen is very important.
Amen. Yeah.
And also allow them to speak up and speak out.
Mhm.
And then show love. And that's it for me.
I hear you. Look, I hear you, Coach Sherry.
Well, a lot of people are thanking you ladies for this vulnerable and upfront, honest conversation. Of course, Michelle and I from the Caribbean Edge certainly appreciate you, because I just know through conversations, it's the best lessons that we can give each other in life is sharing. And I read this, that the US has the largest prison population in the world, and it generates 81 billion annual costs to taxpayers. And that doesn't include police, court costs, bail bond fees, prison funds, which is another $100 billion. So keeping our children out of prison is certainly important. And then for the re-entry, for the families and the parents that love their sons and daughters that have ended up in the jail system, first-time offenders being sentenced to 15, 20 years, and families being destroyed, lives being destroyed through it. It's so important that you ladies joined me for this conversation tonight. We can't thank you enough.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you, everyone, for tuning
me.
in. And we'll see you ladies somewhere, some other time on the Caribbean Edge. Have an amazing
All right.
week.
You
Good
as
night.
well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good
Thank you.
night.
Good night.
Ladies.